Hello, everyone. I am going to attempt this stream one more time. I apologize. This has been a massive headache. I'm having all sorts of internet issues. So we're going to try it one more time. If the stream dies again, I'm just going to call it for today. And we'll try to get a stream going maybe tomorrow. But yeah, having significant issues. I'm sorry. These are the worst technical issues I've ever had doing a stream. So anyways, we're here to talk PlayStation 5. We're here to talk Doom Eternal being delayed to March 2020. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, make sure you drop them in chat like always, and we'll break it down and discuss it. Fingers crossed that we can actually get a live chat going, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, this is going to be my last attempt, the last try to see if we can salvage this thing. It's been crazy. Hello, Patrick, saying it works. Thank you. Fingers crossed that this holds out. Okay. Anyways, so for those not in the know, which I'm sure you all are, Sony dropped brand new PlayStation 5 details today. I'm going to go over it really quick because I already did that once. So I'm going to make this overview a lot quicker, but just in case anyone missed out earlier, I'm going to go through that really quick, and then we're going to break down your questions. So if you have any of them, make sure you drop them in chat now. Okay. So what Sony announced today with Wired, just like they did last time whenever they first dropped PlayStation 5 news. Yes, it's called the PlayStation 5, which we all expected. It's releasing holiday 2020, which makes the most sense. Ray tracing is in the console, and it is hardware accelerated, not software based. Completely revamped UI and home screen. Haptic feedback and adaptive triggers in the controller. And finally, Bluepoint is currently working on a brand new big PlayStation 5 project. So that was the gist. The main thing is that came out of the Wired article today. I'm seeing you're already dropping your questions. I'm sorry I've left y'all hanging back and forth as I've tried to get this stream going. So I'm going to jump straight into what you're asking so we don't waste any more time. All right. Raven Hunter here with the very first question. PS5 price prediction. Okay. Well, looking at what they talked about today just reinforces what I was already thinking, and that is that the PlayStation 5 is going to be a $500 console. I would love to be wrong on that. I would love for this to come in, at $399 or $450, but to me it just looks like a $500 box. And then also what they're saying here today, I was already thinking that, but now with confirmation that we have hardware-based ray tracing implemented in it, that the new DualShock is actually getting more new technology in it than it already had, with things like the haptic feedback and the, feedback triggers. It just looks like a lot of tech in the box. It looks like a lot. It's going to be based off of, as we know, AMD's Zen 2. It's going to be based, with the newest GPU technology that AMD is using. So it just, to me, looks like a $500 console. Love to be wrong. Love for it to be cheaper because that's going to help sales and help adoption. But I'll be shocked. I'll be very surprised if this is under $500. Rick Grayson, today's amazing day. PS5 Beast. Yeah, it's pretty awesome to get new next-gen news. I'm always happy to get it. The coolest thing, I think, out of the whole batch of news today, granted, it's all exciting, it's all interesting, but Jason Schreier from Kotaku was able to confirm that the rumors that were floating around, there were some rumors out there that, third parties weren't getting the info that they needed, that it was hitting a little bit too late and they were worried. He debunked all that. He said he spoke to multiple sources. They said the tools are on time. The tech is great. So what that means to me is that next gen projects are going to be well on their way. They're doing well. So that's the best news to me. Honestly, out of all of this, that's the best news because it means games at launch shouldn't be in jeopardy. Patrick here. By the way, Wired said in the article, and who knows, maybe in the next few days we'll see how it actually looks. Is this a tease? Interesting. I actually didn't even pick up on that part. One thing that is interesting about this Wired article is they confirmed that what they saw, the dev kit, was basically the same dev kit that we've all seen, that box with the big V vent cutout on it. They said it looked very similar, if not exact, to the leaked images that we've seen, the leaked, patents that we've seen for it. So that was all legit. That was all very, very real. Sony didn't confirm if that's going to be what the final box looks like design wise. Obviously, there will be some differences, but if, maybe that big V is going to carry over, which is a very unique looking ventilation system. So we know that that's real now. That was 100% legit, all of those leaks. So that's interesting. It is interesting that it has that. And to me, that's a very heavily designed dev kit, which makes me think that some of that is going to transfer into the final system. A lot of times the dev kits don't look that much like the final console, but this is like heavily specialized. It's not just a generic blank square box that you see sometimes on dev kits. Sometimes they look very, very simplistic, but there's a lot of engineering in this dev kit. It's very, very unique looking. So I would be surprised if all of that is just dev kit only and none of it goes into the final box. I suspect, it's going to look different, but that some of that is going to carry over into the design. It's just a little bit too much engineering to be just a dev kit, in my opinion. All right, Carnage Ghost. Hello there. If PS5 is releasing in December, I think it'll be earlier than that. What the hell will we get from June to November since all developers moved into next gen? Would it be massive dry window? Okay, so I suspect that PlayStation 5's earlier than December. They just said holiday. They didn't specifically say December. So my guess is it's going to be more than likely November. Could even be as early as October. Could be December, but I don't think so. My guess is that you get this either October or November 2020 in your release. They'll want it out in time for Black Friday, in my opinion. And on top of that, the secondary part of your question here, what will we get from June to November? So one thing that's interesting in the Wired article is that they confirmed Ghost of Tsushima will be out before the PlayStation 5, that it is still a PlayStation 4 game. I had theorized, since we hadn't heard anything about this game in a really long time, that it might be a PlayStation 5 project now. I mean, I always thought it was going to be on PS4 as well, but I thought maybe, they were going to delay it a little bit to the PS5 launch to try to, pair that with it to get a lot of buzz. But that is not the case. They're saying it is a PS4 game. It will be out before the PlayStation 5. So that's a big one that you'll get before, next gen gets here. Ghost of Tsushima. It's probably going to be sometime in the summer, a June, July, August type release. I would think, since if it was September, that seems a little too close to next gen to not delay it. So my guess is Ghost of Tsushima is a summer game. In regards to third parties, yes, I do think next summer is going to be pretty dry. Summer's always dry in general, but if you look at the first half of 2020, it's insane. It's just craziness, right? There's new games hitting within weeks of each other constantly, big AAA games, and that's because publishers are trying to get these games out the door before all of the focus shifts to next gen, right? By the time we hit next summer, by the time we hit E3 2020, everyone's going to be talking about next gen, period. That's going to be where all the focus is, all of the hype. So basically, you're seeing all the publishers get the games out the door for current gen before everything shifts to a next gen focus. So I suspect next summer and early September and stuff might be pretty soft. Just a guess, but that's what I'm thinking. Probably not a super heavy release slate until next gen in the second half of the year, but first half is insane. All right, what do we got next? Raven Hunter, that's what I think. Okay, 500 seems like a fair price. Yeah, that's what I'm leaning towards, Raven Hunter. It seems like a $500 box to me. All right. Carnage Ghost, did my question appear? Yeah, I answered it. Sorry. All right, Patrick here. Games question. Do you think that we'll get more big games and maybe exclusives within the first year of PS5, or is there going to be a stale year like with PS4? Good question. And this actually goes back to something I had talked about before. Jason Schreier confirming that the rumors about, third parties not being ready for next gen, him debunking that lines up exactly with what I was talking about that I was hearing last year. So I'd commented on this on Twitter, on forums. I'm not like a super hardcore insider in terms of like behind the scenes stuff. I know a little bit, but I don't consider myself like a major leaks guy. but I do talk to some developers, I do talk to some publishers, and what I had heard last year is that they were much more confident. Publishers and developers were much more confident going into next gen than they were going into the Xbox One and the PS4 launch. And that's because, before last gen launch, there was a lot of worry, that things like mobile and the surge of PC gaming might be making consoles slightly obsolete. I know that sounds crazy now since we've seen PS4 and Switch, just destroy in sales. But before this gen started, a lot of publishers were worried, about how successful consoles might be. And PlayStation 4, especially, and now Switch selling extremely strong, was making publishers a lot more confident that consoles are here to stay. They're okay. It's safe to invest into projects. I had talked about that last year, that's what I was hearing, that next gen was going to have a lot more games early on than this gen had. A common complaint in the first year to 2 years of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One was there just were not enough games, right? A lot of people were upset that we were getting a lot of ports of older games, right? A lot of HD, remasters, a lot of cross-gen games, not a lot of games that felt like true next-gen experiences. And that's because a lot of them were not greenlit. Like a lot of those games that you saw that felt like next-gen games, they weren't greenlit until after the consoles launched. Once publishers started seeing strong sales, they got a lot more confident. Okay, now it's safe to make these AAA projects. This time around, from what I was hearing last year, there's going to be more AAA games ready to go at launch. There's going to be more games that have had a good development time on them. So I'm glad Jason cleared that up, because that was one thing when these new rumors came out, that third parties were worried. I was like, man, that doesn't line up with what I was hearing last year. Maybe some things have changed behind the scenes that I didn't know about. But Jason saying that just reinforces what I had heard, and makes me very, very confident about the software release slate for next gen early. I think it's going to be a lot better than what we experienced with PS4 and Xbox One. I think you're going to see a lot more big, very next gen looking games. Hope that answers your question. All right. Next up, we got Rick Grayson. The advanced haptics, especially on the triggers, is a pretty hype move. Yeah, it reminds me of what Xbox One did with their rumble triggers. Obviously, this sounds more advanced, right? Some of the things that are described in the Wired article sound a lot more advanced than what we got in the Xbox One controller. But that was one thing that I did like about the Xbox One controller. Games like Forza, you could really feel the acceleration and the braking in the triggers. It did actually add an extra element of immersion in games like that. I really like that feature. Not enough games take advantage of it, but with it becoming a more common thing now, right? With PlayStation 5 doing it, I'm assuming the next Xbox One controller will keep that feature. I hope we see it a lot more used, because it is a very cool feature, and I think it really does help immersion. I agree. All right. Let's see where we're at. All right, DMV fan. What do you think of the Avengers Kamala Khan trailer? In my opinion, it was the best thing they've released for the game so far and increased my hype by a lot. Also has 1.5 million views on Marvel's channel. I was actually just talking with someone today about Avengers, and what we were talking about, me and this other person, I'm not going to name them, but there's someone else that's a very well versed in sales, someone whose opinion I respect a lot, very intelligent. And we were talking about Avengers, and we both kind of felt we're not sure how we feel about it with sales, right? And that's because you would think with the IP, you would think the Avengers name, the Marvel name, this should be a huge game. Look at how big Spider-Man PS4 was, right? It was absolutely gigantic. But Avengers, at least now, doesn't feel like it has that same level of hype. A lot of the early showings had kind of a mixed reaction, from people online. But I agree with you, DMV fan. I think what they've shown this week, I feel a lot better about it. I think it looks a lot better than some of the early stuff we've seen. So I'm not ready to write off Avengers yet. I think Avengers can still be very big. But yeah, I am curious on that one, right? It should be huge. It absolutely should be. But right now, it kind of feels like it's getting lost a little bit among the Cyberpunks and the Final Fantasy remakes and the Last of Us Part 2s. Those games feel like they have a lot more surging momentum than Avengers does. So I am going to be curious to see, over the coming months, what happens with Avengers. Avengers is after those games, right? It's in May. Whereas, a lot of the other ones, The Last of Us is in February, for example. Those games are closer. So Avengers has longer to sell itself, to market itself, to build itself up. So yeah, definitely not writing Avengers off by any means yet. And what they've shown this week, I think, looks better than some of the early stuff we've seen. Rick Grayson, for me at least, I'll be waiting for the PS5 release of these obvious cross-gen games. Yeah, that's going to be interesting, right? I suspect that a lot of the big games, The Last of Us Part 2, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Cyberpunk, I suspect they're all going to get next-gen enhancements, right? Any game basically that's releasing 2020, that's a major AAA project. I'll be shocked if it gets no next-gen enhancements, especially ones that have like online features or they're like flagship exclusive games. I think things like The Last of Us will still sell huge out the gate. I'd commented that it is breaking records in pre-orders for Sony. I can't go into how I know that, but it is breaking records for PlayStation 4 pre-orders, both physical and digital, from what I have been told. So I think those games will be huge. People don't want to get The Last of Us spoiled. They don't want to get necessarily Cyberpunk spoiled, but I am interested to see, if some people hold off a bit. Off the bat, they'll be massive, no doubt. But I do wonder if legs will be a little bit shorter for those first couple months as people wait to pick them up with next gen, or if it just has very minimal effect. They're huge out the gate, great legs, and then just get huge boosts when next gen gets here. It'll be an interesting thing to watch. All right. Rick Grayson, following up, I'm thinking 2020 will be my backlog catch-up period. Yeah, 2020 is just crazy. It's going to be a madhouse. Exile End, finally stream is live. Yeah, I'm glad it's holding up. I apologize, everyone, for all of the issues today. By the way, I think going into next gen, we're going to get a lot of games in the first year. I agree. I absolutely agree. It's going to be interesting to see which exclusives are right off the bat. We know Halo Infinite is going to be ready for Scarlet launch. A lot of people are theorizing that Horizon Zero Dawn 2 is going to be a launch title for PlayStation 5. I'm not 100% sure if that game's going to be launched, but I absolutely expect it within the first year of PlayStation 5. I'd love for it to be a launch game. Sony's going to have some big guns ready for launch. I'm just not 100% sure if Guerrilla will be ready at launch or not, but I do think Horizon 2 does hit in the first year of PS5. Within that first year, I think you'll get it. All right. Raven Hunter, what's your thoughts on Ghost of Tsushima? I touched on this earlier. Definitely is going to be hitting before PlayStation 5. It's still a PS4 focused project. I suspect you'll hear about it soon. If it's going to be before PS5, they're probably going to wait to talk about it like a big blowout, I'm guessing, until, The Last of Us gets here, because that's so close now. The Last of Us is February. Like, it's only a few months away. So I'm guessing the real hype cycle for Ghost, you might see something before Last of Us launches, but I'm guessing the major push is not going to come until after February. It's just what makes the most sense. Not they've got Death Stranding in November they got to focus on with marketing. They've got The Last of Us right after that in February, and then they've got Ghost of Tsushima. So I think, right now everything's Death Stranding and Last of Us, and after those two games are out of the way, the marketing team can really focus on Ghost of Tsushima. Rick Grayson, with the ecosystems becoming stabilized, I think the devs will be more willing to bring games early. Yeah, like I said, from everything I've been told over the last year, and this is from people at publishers and at developers. This isn't rumors through the grapevine. These are things I've been directly told from devs that I talk to. They feel better. They feel better going into this gen than last gen. So I agree. I think you'll see a lot more big games early. I don't think you're going to have, of course, you're going to still get some cross-gen projects. You're still going to get that kind of stuff, but I don't think it's going to be as dry, as those early PS4, Xbox One years were. All right. Bahamut 1010. Do you think Final Fantasy VII Remastered will surpass 15? Final Fantasy 15, around 9 million only on PS4. Well, I think it absolutely can. It's It's tough to say for sure because Final Fantasy 15, has a PC version, has an Xbox One version. PS4 is clearly the main seller for Final Fantasy 15, but it does have sales on other platforms as well. But I will say this: I think Final Fantasy 7 absolutely can. I feel like the hype around 7 is actually bigger than the hype around 15 was. 15 definitely had excitement. It was a brand new Final Fantasy, but the hype around 7 feels very strong, especially after E3 this year. There was a little bit of time where I felt like people were starting to get a little worried about the game, kind of disappeared, switched development, right? It was being developed out of house at Square Enix, and then it got brought in-house. So I for a little bit, I was feeling like people were a little worried about that game, but E3 showing looked amazing. Everything they've shown after that has shocked me how good it looks, right? I keep waiting for them to mess up. I know some people don't like that the game's split into multiple parts. Personally, that doesn't bother me at all. If it means we're getting this level of production, right, these amazing graphics and visuals, to split it up, I'd rather it be split up than be super cut back and tried to force it all into one. That's just my opinion. But I feel like it looks really good. So I do think it's possible, Bahamut. I definitely think it can. Nick Taylor, 4K Ultra. Will we be spending $70 for new games next gen? I don't think so. I think games stay at 60 because, if anything, we're seeing a shift in game pricing, right? This is something we can go into really quick for just a second. So right now, the industry, if you pay attention, it's kind of moving in two directions. Right? $60 is still your plain boxed game. I suspect $60 will still be your plain box game next gen as well. But they're pushing out on both ends of the other spectrum. So they're trying to get games as cheap an entry barrier as possible through things like Game Pass, right? Subscription. You're seeing a lot more free-to-play type games now with PlayStation Now. Granted, they're not doing games day one, like Microsoft. But again, you're seeing a subscription. You're seeing a cheaper way of getting games in. So on one end, you're getting publishers trying to get that entry-level barrier as low as they can. On the other end of things, you're also seeing collector's editions going really high in price. We're talking 200, 250 being the regular. That's not necessarily anything new. You've seen expensive collector's editions for a while, but they really lately have been pushing that price barrier up. You're also seeing like a lot more $80 editions of games. You're seeing that ASP try to be increased on the people that will spend the money. So you're seeing it push both ways. The people that, publishers feel are going to buy that game, they're your hardcore gamer. They are trying to get more money out of them in other ways than raising the base price tag. They're trying to get you to get those $70 editions, those $80 editions, etc. And then you're also seeing the opposite, them just trying to get you in as cheap as possible. So I don't think the regular game goes up in price, but I do think controllers do. So I think your new DualShock, your DualShock 5, especially considering it's getting new tech in it, those will probably go up $10. $70 is what I'm thinking. That's already what the Switch Pro controller is $69.99, and they get away with it. So I suspect you'll see the DualShock 5 and whatever the next Xbox controller is be $70. All right. All right, here we go. We've got one from Ruger here. Hey, Benji, I think you said that you're predicting Death Stranding will be the biggest Kojima launch, which sounds huge. And then you said Final Fantasy VII Remaster is tracking even higher. That sounds insane. I actually want to change something on that. Not anymore. Death Stranding right now in pre-orders is tracking better than Final Fantasy VII. Granted, Death Stranding is much closer. So don't take that as I'm saying Death Stranding, wow, sell Final Fantasy VII Remastered or Remake. I'm not saying that, but things have shifted. Death Stranding right now is outpacing Final Fantasy VII. So it will be interesting to see how it goes. Yes, I am expecting Death Stranding to be the biggest launch ever for Kojima, unless something changes. Now, that game is so bizarre and out there. If reviews come out and they are trash, like if they're really, really bad, I don't expect that. But that game is so weird. I feel like if reviews are terrible, it could turn a lot of people off on it. That already were a little worried about the weirdness. But as long as reviews are good, yes, I am still expecting Death Stranding to be the biggest Kojima launch ever. At least at launch. I'm not saying it's going to be the best-selling Kojima game ever long term, but at launch, yes. All right, Silver Blue. Did you see Death Stranding got its ESRB summary? I actually have not, Silver Blue. I haven't looked at that. It's probably some interesting info in there, though, huh? Ruger, do you think The Last of Us Part 2 might cannibalize some of Final Fantasy VII Remastered sales, considering there are only 10 days between their release? I don't think so too much, and that's just because they're very different games. Now, there's going to be overlap, 100%. There's going to be people that want Final Fantasy VII, and there's going to be people that want The Last of Us, but they are like radically different genres, right? One's a Japanese RPG. The other one is this hardcore M-rated, survival shooter story game. It's like they're just very different. So I don't think so too much. What I'm more worried about are games like Doom Eternal, Watch Dogs Legion, Vampire Bloodlines 2, The Masquerade. These types of games are the ones that I'm worried about in that Q1 and Q2, because here's my 4 safe bets, right? If you want my 4 safe bets, the games I can almost guarantee you will sell massive no matter what in the first half of next year. Here they are. Final Fantasy VII Remastered, The Last of Us Part 2. I keep saying remaster, it's remake. You know what I mean. The Last of Us Part 2, Cyberpunk 2077, and Animal Crossing. Those 4 games will not miss. Those 4 games will sell. I can guarantee you that. Now, the ones, like I said, you should be worried about are the Watch Dogs Legions, the Doom Eternals, these other games in that time frame, because the first half of next year is absurd. I'm not saying those games will not sell. They could be huge, but those are the ones you should keep your eyes on. I don't think any of the 4 I mentioned are ones you should be worried about. All right. Rick Grayson, liking the new hat. Where'd you find it? Thanks, Rick. I got it. Those of you that know me, I'm a hat guy. I wear a hat all the time. I got this one at Target. I get most of my clothes at Target. I'm a Target fan. I'll get them at other stuff too, but I get a lot of my stuff at Target. All right, the Falcon 1. How do you think Sony will handle remasters since the PS5 is backwards compatible with all PS4 games and VR titles? Great question. Hard to say for sure. I suspect, this is a tough one, because on one hand, it feels like they could get away with charging for next-gen versions, right? It feels like if you're going to get a better version of The Last of Us Part 2 and they can make you rebuy it, in some ways it feels like that makes sense. But on the other hand, I feel like people would just be really upset, right? If it's backwards compatible anyways, I feel like consumers would not be happy if they have to rebuy their game. It's one thing to rebuy the game when it straight up doesn't play on the platform, right? Like back when PS4 came out and they re-released The Last of Us and games like this, it made a little bit more sense, because you could not put that disc in your PS4 and play it. But now that you can, right? Now that it's fully backwards compatible, at least that's what they're trying to do from what they say. Man, it'd be a tough sell, I think, without some major backlash to be like, hey, the game you already own that does work on this system, you've got to pay more to get the better features. I just think that would not go over well. So my guess is that next gen upgrades will be free. That's just a guess. I cannot tell you that for sure, but that's my guess. Otherwise, I think you just risk way too much consumer backlash on that. All right. Vincenzo Mario here. Hi, Benji. Hello. How are you? Thanks for joining in the chat. What time is it? I've got to bounce off here at 1:30 because I got to go to work. So 15 more minutes of the stream, and then I got to go. I'm sorry that I had issues and it took a while to get the stream going, but I can still chill for another 15 minutes. But then I got to get ready for work. All right. Bahamut 1010. I don't think Horizon is that soon. Those types of games take time for sure, Bahamut. But when you look at it, Horizon, the gap between Horizon and launch for PS5 is doable, mostly because what takes a really long time whenever you're making a new IP, especially a AAA one, is the setup, right? If you're building a new engine, B, whenever you're just figuring out exactly what you're doing, you're figuring out the mechanics, you're figuring out your characters, you're figuring out the technology. Really, it's that first entry that takes a really long time, right? You see games regularly that are AAA new IP take 5 or more years, but sequels usually you can get out much quicker. And I suspect Horizon 2 will be that case as well. It's going to be the same engine. It'll be an upgraded version, but there's no way they're going to build a brand new engine for Horizon 2 after all the work that they did with Horizon 1. So they're going to have the same engine that they can use, just an upgraded version of it. They already know what Horizon is. Granted, of course, there's going to be big major changes, both in terms of story and gameplay and things like that. But the core systems are figured out. They're done. They work. So I think it's doable. First year for sure. Again, like I said, I'm not quite sure if it makes launch, but I'll be shocked if you don't get it at all in the first 12 months of the PS5. That would surprise me. I think that's the most likely candidate sequel-wise for Sony's big games, right? Last of Us clearly is not going to have a new game. Uncharted, again, there is some theories that there's another studio making a new Uncharted game. So maybe, I think it's San Diego that people are theorizing that on. Maybe you get an Uncharted by a different team, but I don't think so either. God of War's not going to be ready. So it just makes the most sense, right? Horizon's got to be there in that first year, I think. All right. Raven Hunter. Horizon was one of my favorite games. Me too. Loved it. Absolutely one of my favorite new IP this gen. Amazing game. Yes, Guerrilla, that was really the coming out party for Guerrilla, and I hope we see a new Killzone. I've talked about this before. I want a new Killzone too. I would like to see a reboot of that franchise, especially now that Guerrilla really feels like they're hitting their stride. Raven Hunter, I got it $9.99 during holidays and put 60 hours into it. Yeah, it's a fantastic game. Here we go. Vincenzo Mario. Benji, do you think PS5 will be more powerful than Scarlet? Ooh, this is a tough question. If so, can Scarlet cost $50 less and undercut PS5? Thanks. Yeah, this is a tough question. There is rumors. This is not my rumors. This is not what I'm hearing. Like I said, I don't consider myself a super insider. I'm just going by rumors that other people have talked about. There are rumors that PlayStation 5 is actually currently outperforming Scarlet, but the rumors are like it's a very negligible difference, like very, very small. From the rumors, it is outperforming it, but it's not this massive gap. Maybe just a very small difference between them. We don't know that for sure. We'll find out when the specs come out. That's just rumors that some people have claimed they heard. If there is a power difference, I don't think it will be big enough that Scarlet can undercut PS5. I expect them both to be 500. That's just what I think they're going to be. I don't think there's enough of a power gap there in technology either way, right? I don't think Scarlet is going to be so much more powerful than the PlayStation 5 that Sony can undercut them, or vice versa. I suspect price is basically going to be the same. I just think they're probably too close in tech. All right. Salty Yagi. Hi, Benji. Love to see you at it again. Thank you, Salty. I love to be back at it again. These chats are literally like my favorite thing that I do. I'm so pumped that you all show up for these. Patrick, Final Fantasy VII Remake versus Cyberpunk 2077. How is it looking right now? I remember you said on Twitter that Cyberpunk 2077 was looking kind of insane. Yeah, Cyberpunk's going to be bigger. Cyberpunk's 100% bigger than Final Fantasy VII. Yep, going to be bigger. Cyberpunk might be bigger than everything. I know that sounds crazy, but it might be bigger than everything. It might be the biggest game of the first half of the year. The only one I think that can contend with it is The Last of Us. The Last of Us is probably going to be bigger on PlayStation 4. I do think that. I think like strictly in terms of PlayStation, PS4 sales, The Last of Us will probably be a bigger game than Cyberpunk. But when you add up PlayStation, PC, and Xbox sales, right now, I think Cyberpunk is the biggest game of the first half of next year. Bahamut 1010, Cyberpunk 2077 will launch on 3 platforms. Yeah, exactly. And it'll be big on all 3, right? It's not one of these games like a JRPG that has like a very heavy split to PlayStation or like a very heavy split like to one console. Cyberpunk's going to be huge on Xbox, huge on PlayStation, and huge on PC. It's going to be big on everything. So to me, that's the front runner for the biggest game of the first half of 2020. Silver Blue, Seraphim, can you see any games backing off from that insane release period? I hope so. I never root for delays unless publisher really feels like they need to in terms of making that game quality. Like, that's one thing I respect about Doom getting delayed. It's a bummer. It's going to be into a way crazier time of the year now in March 2020 than its release date was, but I respect delaying it to make sure that game's good. Totally respect it. That said, I just feel like something is going to get lost in that storm of games. Even though, I'm seeing a lot of people say they're different genres. That's totally true. But at the same time, there's only so much marketing focus you can get at a time, right? There's only so much vision, right, that you can get on your product with all these games. Like, there is so many. One that a lot of people are forgetting about is Rainbow Six Quarantine right now. Siege is a massive game, like huge. Rainbow Six Siege is enormous, and people love zombie games. If you look at how Days Gone sells, if you look at how Resident Evil sells, and Rainbow Six Quarantine is both, right? It's a zombie game and Rainbow Six game. That could be huge too, and that's supposed to be in the first half of next year. So I would like to see a few of these smaller games, right, like Bloodlines and things like that. I'd like to see some stuff get pushed to summer, just because I think there's a better chance of success if you get out of that maelstrom of releases in the first half of the year. All right. Bahamut, remake. Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I keep saying remastered. It's Final Fantasy VII Remake. All right, Fisher King, do you expect third parties to abandon Switch once PS5 and Xbox Scarlet come? No, I don't. It might be tougher to secure Western third-party support. Right now, you're seeing a lot of Western ports, which are in general doing well. I tweeted about this recently. You got Overwatch and The Witcher 3 hitting this next week. Those need to sell well. They need to sell well. If you want to keep seeing Western support, you need those two games to do good. And here's why. Those games are massive successes on other platforms. So trust me, publishers will be watching how those games sell. Trust me on that. I'm not saying if they bomb that you're never going to see Western games again. Nothing like that. These are, late ports. But here's the thing. They're two of the biggest games of the entire generation. So if you put these games that are hugely successful out on Switch and they don't perform well, I do think you'll see publishers worried about that. I really do think so. So they need to be successes. Mortal Kombat 11 did great on the Switch, and that was a hardcore M-rated game. Games like Diablo have done well. So I don't think that Switch gets no third-party support once next gen comes, but I do think Switch needs to keep proving that it can sell Western AAA games if it wants to keep getting that support. You know what I'm saying? It can't just be one of these things where it does well with a few ports, while it's competing with Xbox One and PS4, which are older consoles now. It needs to prove it can keep selling software. As long as it keeps selling software, you'll still see games come to it. Not every game, of course, but you will still see games come to it. All right. Where are we at? All right, I still got a few more minutes. Bahamut 1010, any indication on Dragon Quest XI S sales? Last year sold around 700,000 on PS4 and Steam. Is Switch doing better? I don't know, partially because I was on vacation recently. So I've been on vacation. Today's my first day back to work. I've been on vacation for like almost 2 weeks. It's been like a week and a half. So to be honest, I've been talking to less people than I normally talk about that, have sales information. Myself, my sales information is lower than normal. So these games that just came out in the last week or two, I'll be honest, my visibility on them right now is not great because of vacation. But the little bit I've seen, it seems to be doing well. I don't think it's going to do as well as the PS4 version, though. But just as a guess. Don't take that as 100%. I'm kind of out of the loop at the moment. Ruger, do you have a guess for why Final Fantasy VII Remake is a timed PS4 exclusive, even though Sony isn't publishing it? Do you think they are partially paying for the marketing, etc.? I don't know how these deals work. Ruger, from what it looks like to me as an outside observer, it does look like Sony is helping in marketing. The fact you're seeing this in like state of plays and stuff like that. I think Sony is probably going to be footing some of that bill for marketing. And a lot of people forget that with video game budgets, marketing, it can be close to the marketing alone can cost almost as much as the development of the game. Not 100%. Usually the development of the game is still more, but marketing budgets are huge. We're talking tens of millions of dollars. So if you can get help with marketing, I mean, that's one reason why you see these marketing deals take place, right? There's a reason why publishers take these deals, and it's because it takes some of that pressure, some of that financial pressure off of them, because I mean, you're talking tens of millions of dollars in investment. So it seems to me like, it first showed up at Sony's E3 conference. It looks to me like Sony is aiding in the marketing of this game. I think that's probably part of it. And also because PlayStation's a guaranteed success platform, right? I mean, we all know no matter what, Final Fantasy VII is going to sell the most units that it sells on PlayStation 4. So whether this game eventually comes to Xbox or it eventually comes to PC, PlayStation is going to be its lead sales platform anyways. And if they're also going to get help in footing that bill for marketing, it just makes a lot of sense for Square Enix, right? So it's a pretty good deal for them. All right. Silver Blue, I wonder what Kojima production works on Decima will add to Horizon 2. Yeah, for sure, right? They've done a lot of work on that game, and we know Kojima Productions and Guerrilla have an amazing relationship with each other. They're sharing tech back and forth. You're seeing all kinds of really, kind of sweet and cute pictures of Kojima when Death Stranding went gold, and Guerrilla celebrating with the team through video. So yeah, all of the advances that Kojima is making in his team to the Decima engine is also going to pay dividends for Horizon as well, right? So yeah, that's a good point. It's a great point. It's definitely going to help out Horizon 2 as well. Abdul TK, hi man, what about Bloodborne 2? I wish I knew. I wish I could answer that question. I want Bloodborne 2 so much, but I have no idea if it's coming. If it is, I don't think From is going to make it. I know that sounds crazy, but if it is, I think Sony and Japan Studio are going to make that game without From. It just doesn't seem like From's interested in it. From all interviews, they do not seem interested in making that game, mostly because From really wants to focus on making multi-platform games, right? Like that's really what they want to do. So if it's coming, I don't think that it's going to be From Software making it. I suspect it's going to be Sony first party. The random guy, if either console is 0.1% more powerful, they will use it in their marketing. 100%. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If PlayStation 5 is even marginally more powerful, they'll talk about it. Same with Xbox. I just don't think the gap is going to be big enough to have a price difference. I think they're going to be close enough in power that your price tag's probably not any different. Vincenzo Mario, thanks so much for the answer. Of course. Thanks for the question. Tony Yayo, what happened to earlier stream? It was a disaster. My tech has been all over the place today. My internet's been a disaster. It's held up well here, though, so that's the good news. All right, I'm going to just take these last few questions that are in the chat, and then I'm going to end the chat so I can get ready for work. But everything here I'll answer. All right, Glorious War. I feel like Cyberpunk might get delayed. It might. There's a chance. There's a chance. I don't think so, but I will say out of those big first half of the year, like mega AAA games, that one has the most chance, but I still think that they make the date. Ruger, thanks, Bahamut. I've been curious because I don't feel like Sony has done any special marketing for Final Fantasy VII Remake so far. Square Enix seems to be doing all the heavy lifting for marketing. Square Enix is doing the most, but make no mistake, Sony's doing some stuff too. It being in state of play is not an accident. It showing up at the Sony E3 stage wasn't an accident. So yes, Square Enix is definitely doing their own marketing, but Sony's involved in that as well. Glorious War, Iron Man VR needs to change the release date to much competition day one regardless. It being a VR game makes it so different that it helps it a little bit. But yeah, it's still one of those smaller games coming in a crazy time period. But the fact it's VR, like, it's its own thing completely. So VR is kind of its own totally separate market. So that one I don't think makes a huge difference when it releases compared to some of the other ones. But I mean, of course, it would still be nice if it was in a slower period. Here we go. Here's a good one. HDWJ and then EP. Sorry, I have no idea how to say that. Could Cyberpunk be as big as Red Dead 2 was? Yeah, it could actually even be bigger. Sounds crazy, but it could. Yeah, very well. I fully suspect Cyberpunk to sell over 20 million copies. Fully. There's almost not a doubt in my mind Cyberpunk sells 20 million plus copies. So yeah, yep, definitely could be. Not for sure. I'm not saying it's for sure going to be bigger than Red Dead, but Cyberpunk's going to sell 20 million plus unless it's a disaster. Rang Tolu, welcome back. Don't really have any questions, but good to see you back. Thanks. Good to be back. We're almost done here. Last couple. The random guy, Benji, this isn't about sales, but do you think Xbox will finally get a Game of the Year nom this year? I would like to see Gears 5 get a nomination. I loved that game. Think it was really good. I don't think it's my Game of the Year. It's not Game of the Year to me. Right now, Control is my Game of the Year. And I would also probably put Resident Evil 2 Remake ahead of Gears 5. Those are probably my top two right now, Control and Resident Evil 2 Remake. But I would like to see the Coalition get a Game of the Year nomination for Gears 5. I do think they deserve that. I think it is one of the best games this year. Not the best, in my opinion, but one of the best. All right. Carnage Ghost, my last question for today. If PS4 backwards compatibility on PS5 is limited to like half of the library, do you see them introducing a program that's like Xbox backwards compatibility? Good question. Maybe not everything is backwards compatible right at launch. It's starting, they just said in an interview that they're trying, that's the goal, is to have as much backwards compatibility as possible, but I would say it's possible not everything's ready to go on day one. Eventually, though, I think pretty much everything will be. So you may see where it's like, hey, here is, 200 of the biggest PlayStation 4 games ready right off the bat with PS5 backwards compatibility, and we'll add more, as time goes on. That is possible. That's possible. But I think overall, you'll see the vast majority of the PS4 library rather quickly available in backwards compatibility. All right. I think that sums it up. I think we've got everything, right? Maybe wrong. Close to 30 million for Rang. Yeah. Red Dead's huge. But thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining the stream. I'm sorry I had so many issues earlier. Thanks, everybody, for jumping in chat. Super awesome. I love doing these. They're like my favorite things to do. I'm going to go ahead and chill for just like 2 seconds. I hate doing this part, but if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps out a bunch. It truly helps me out as I try to grow these platforms. And thank you, everyone. You're the best. I'll see you on Twitter or in the next live chat. I'm not planning on doing any more live chats probably the rest of this week, but if there's some big news, I can't remember if NPD's out this week. If NPD's out this week, then I'll do another live chat for sure later this week. Otherwise, probably the next live chat is next week, since I already did 2 this week. Thanks, everyone, and I will see you next time.